Hey, what's up, you guys? I have Starla here. She is our wonderful groups leader and events coordinator. And we're filming this early. I'm going to be in Detroit for my sister-in-law's wedding. So I'm going to miss you guys, but I'll be back next week. And Starla has agreed to give her testimony and talk about some things that she's learned about God. And you're going to love it. I can't wait. And so she's going to film the video for a little bit and you're going to enjoy it. So take it away.
Okay. Okay. So a few weeks ago, I had a conversation with Pastor Josh, and I felt like God had been tugging on my heart to put myself out there more and be obedient to him. So I'm going to talk about the things that I've learned about God through my experiences. And so this is my story. I was born and raised in a Christian home, and I was literally probably propped on a pew when I was 6 days old. I am the youngest of 4 children. I was loud. I talked way too much, and I was very high strung. I had a ton of energy, and I also dealt with anxiety, and my mom picked up on that right away. Growing up, I was told quite often, probably every day, multiple times a day, that I was loved, I felt cared for, and I was shown God's love, and I was taught God's love, and I was taught his compassion and his grace. So my grandpa was a pastor, and so we spent a lot of time at the church. We were those, just like pastors' kids, we were grandparent kids. So we were, as kids, we were running around the church. We were getting yelled at by people for running around the church. We were there all the time. We were outside swinging on the branches. And so the church was like a second home for me. And we were that family that went to church all the time. So we were there for Sunday morning service, and that was when there was Sunday morning Sunday school, Sunday morning church service, and then Sunday evening we also had a service, and we'd come back for that. And then there was Wednesday, and then we would come for Wednesday night service. So I was very, very involved in church. That included Bible quizzing, kids choir. I was on the church basketball team. I had the lead in a kids program. I went to summer camp every year. So around the age of about 12, my oldest brother left for college, and it was a really strange time. I remember it changed our family dynamic, like, hugely. And it really did a number of my anxiety. I wasn't a huge fan of change, and I learned that I didn't know how to channel my anxiety in a healthy way. And that is my first memory of depression. The biggest problem with what I was feeling is I had no idea what to call it. So as a kid, depression wasn't talked about a lot. They didn't talk about it at school. They didn't talk about it at church. In our family, they didn't talk about it. And if it was talked about in my home, it was done in a negative way. So oftentimes referring to that one crazy aunt. So I decided I didn't want to be perceived that way, and it would be best to keep it hidden, and maybe it would just go away. So it was about that time that I found humor, and it somewhat worked as a deflection for my depression. So I became addicted to making people laugh, most of the time my friends and at school. And sometimes it was at other people's expense. I was really great at doing voiceovers. So like ad-libbing when people were talking from across the room. Most of the time it was like the popular kids at the lunch table. And at the same time, I also found my love for writing. I found that journaling was very therapeutic for me. And it was somewhere where I felt like I could express my feelings. I also found that making up stories was very good for escapism for me. And so for a while, it felt like I had found a good balance. So I was making people laugh during the day and writing at night. So as a teenager, I grew up in Washington State, and I was really involved in youth group. Our youth group was quite large. We had a regular night would be about 75, maybe 100 kids. I went on every retreat, went to every camp. I was on the leadership team. I was on the worship team. You name it, I was there. I was that girl who was completely in love with God. I was on fire for God. And at school, I was that girl who invited everyone to church. I invited them all to youth group. I was the church girl. And honestly, that was my nickname at school. I was literally called church girl. Not very original if you ask me, but that was my nickname and it stuck. So for a while, it didn't bother me because I had a relationship with Christ. I knew that junior high and high school didn't matter. I knew that it didn't matter because what only mattered was what God thought of me. And it didn't matter because God had a plan for my life. And that's what I was taught always, is that God had a plan for my life. I was here for a reason and for a purpose. And my favorite Bible verse as a teen, which is still my favorite Bible verse, but it's somewhat maybe changed slightly, is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. But the truth was, the nickname did bother me a lot. And as soon as I took my focus off of my value in Christ, I allowed the devil to sneak into my thoughts. And my worry over what others thought of me became front and center. And I started thinking it was a lot of work to be the church girl. So fast forward a few years, and a few things happened when I turned 15 and I started my sophomore year in high school. My sister left for college, and it was sad. I was sad, but the best part was I finally had my own room for the first time ever. So that helped, I think, the change a little bit. The first day of school, sophomore year, I met a new girl, became friends with her, and we seemed to hit it off right away, right from the start. So of course, I invited her to church. She started going with me regularly to youth group, and quickly the two of us became practically inseparable. I thought what I had found was a genuine lifelong friendship. But what I didn't realize was she was becoming the most important person in my life, more important than God. I valued her opinion of me, and I allowed her to make decisions for me. And slowly, she began to control me. And at the same time, my solid group of friends at school, they started questioning their identity in the world and their identity in school and where they fit. And so I started questioning too. That, along with the nagging thoughts from the devil telling me how much work it was to keep up the church girl facade, made me super confused. So in the 10th grade, 15 years old, I found myself somehow wrapped up in the high school party scene, including smoking and drinking. Each time I'd feel guilty because I knew what I was doing was wrong. I knew I was hurting God by my choices. But I also knew, because I had been raised this way, that God was a forgiving God. And for a while, I was still going to youth group. I was staying very involved. I was singing on the worship team on Wednesday night and going out to a party on Friday night. I was living two completely different lives. So my parents were somewhat strict, and I got very smart at figuring out every loophole that I could to work to my advantage. So if they knew my friends, if they knew my friends' parents, if I was going out in a group setting, if I told them where I would be, if I kept going to youth group, if I made it to church on Sunday morning, I figured out if I kept all those things up, I could keep living my other life. And for a while, juggling the two lifestyles was working. It also seemed to keep my anxiety at a thriving level. And the cigarettes and the alcohol were numbing the depression. And youth group was satisfying that craving that I still had for the Lord. So my world flipped off discourse when my youth pastor, who I absolutely adored, was suddenly let go. There were, without going into too much detail, there were some financial accusations, which I'm pretty sure he was later cleared of. But for me, by then, it was too late. I wasn't satisfied with them proving his innocence, and I was angry. I felt betrayed. I mean, if the church could hurt a credible man like him, then I decided I didn't want any part of it. So my heart hardened, and I gave up on my double lifestyle, and I fully gave in to my sinful one. And I grew deeper into it. More parties, more alcohol, more smoking, smoking weed, and lots of lies. But I was more popular than ever. I'd shed my church girl nickname, trading it for ones, you guessed it, were much worse. But I didn't care because I was the life of the party. I was funnier than ever, more fun than ever. Everyone loved me. And if I wasn't there, it wasn't a party. I craved the acceptance and the attention, and I was living for the high of it. So by my senior year in high school, my life looked a lot like this. I had 3 classes only a day. I was going to school from 7:30 a.m. to 10:45 a.m., sometimes going to school high. Then I went to work from 11 to 7, Monday through Friday. And that would clear up my weekends for parties. I was getting high, getting drunk, making out with boys who were sometimes my friends. So I was destroying friendships. I was going to bed sick and waking up hungover. I was making bad choices left and right. My brother, who was in the same grade as me, would try to attend the same parties just so he could be there to babysit me. I was putting myself into dangerous situations over and over. So I was lost, I was confused, I was lying to my parents. My depression was at an all-time low, and the more I tried to cover it up with alcohol or relationships, the worse it got. I had dark thoughts. I tried several things to what I thought was breaking my depression. I tried journaling and I tried comedic relief, and they just weren't working anymore. I kept thinking, I just need a restart, or I just need a do-over. I knew suicide was a sin, and it wasn't like I wanted to die. I just knew I couldn't go on the way I was going any longer. So I tried anorexia along with exercise, thinking I wouldn't need to drink. I wouldn't need to smoke anymore if I learned how to control my body. I didn't like swallowing pills. So one time I crushed up a ton of Tylenol and I went to sleep, hoping I'd wake up and I would be a person I actually recognized. I was desperate for a change. I was desperate for help. I became careless in my lies, purposely, hoping my parents would catch me, would save me. But I didn't want to come out and tell them. I knew that what I was going through would hurt them and they would feel at fault. They would blame themselves. And these were my choices. It was not their fault, because remember, they taught me that that God has a plan for my life. They showed me love. They made me feel safe. So these were my choices. And I remember one night, it was close to graduation. I was in my room and I was journaling because I was still keeping that up. And I don't think I had talked to God in quite a while. But I finally asked him some tough questions, like, where was he? Didn't he see that I was hurting? Didn't he care? I'm supposed to be his child because, that's what I was raised to believe. Isaiah 59:2 says, "But your iniquities have separated you from your God. Your sins have hidden his face from you so that he will not hear." God hadn't left me. I was a stubborn one. My heart was hard, and he'd been waiting there for me all along. I cried out to God and asked that he save me, that he help me out of this cycle, out of this lifestyle, because it wasn't working for me anymore. My favorite Bible verse, Jeremiah 29:11, where it talks about the Lord knowing our plans and him giving us hope and a future, ran through my mind. And at that time, I didn't have hope, and I sure didn't see much of a future. But I felt God's reminder. In Philippians 1:6, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Jesus Christ. It felt as if my eyes had been opened and I saw a small ray of hope. My restart was that I was desperately craving was about to happen if I was willing to put in the work. I was graduating. It would be an easy way out of the party life, and it would be an easy way to cut ties with my controlling friendship. So this wouldn't be my story without sharing the part my husband played in my change. So I met him this summer. I was, before I turned 17. I met him at a gas station. It was a popular gas station in Washington, in the city I grew up. And somehow his friend was friends with my friend's older sister. So I was obviously at a horrible place in my life at that time. But a year later, right before my graduation, we bumped into each other again. And we exchanged numbers and we started talking. I knew I couldn't commit to a relationship with him until I was in a better place in my life. So after graduation, I cut off the toxic friendship. I started going back to church. And when my husband and I learned that we actually attended the same church, I think we took it as a sign and we started dating. I went back to the youth pastor who had replaced the one that I adored, and I apologized for not giving him a chance. So just about a year after graduation, that same youth pastor gave me a chance, and I became a youth leader. He also assigned me as the junior high girls Sunday school teacher. And then later I became the youth drama leader. I even wrote the scripts for our plays. So I had been taught all my life that God is forgiving and God is gracious, but it took him bringing me out of that lifestyle to see that. I'm still not free from anxiety or depression. There are some really hard days. And on those days, I have to make a conscious decision to give it to God. And knowing that he is always there with me, knowing that I'm never alone, knowing that God has a plan for my life, and it's not a life of despair or fear, gives me strength to get through those hard days. John 10:10 says, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full." Because that is God's desire for us. Giving your sin, your addiction, your depression over to God doesn't mean it's going to magically disappear. Unless God decides that he wants to heal you of that, because he can if that's his will for you. But God does tell us in John 16:33, "I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." Making the choice to give God your sin means he will carry the weight of it. He will walk alongside you, and you won't be alone in it. Deuteronomy 31:8 tells us, "The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged." When I notice my anxiety is at a high, or when I've had a panic attack, when my depression is creeping in, it's usually because I have taken my focus off of Christ and placed it in either the world or on myself. I will find myself playing the comparison game, measuring my worth against others, or trying to find my worth through their eyes. So over the years, I've had to find what works to get myself back on track, and it starts with quiet time with God and asking him to show me the areas in my life where I am spending too much of my focus. For you, that could be what you need to do as well. Start with prayer. No matter what you've done, no matter what has happened to you, God is there waiting for you. He's waiting for you to ask for his help, to ask for his forgiveness, talking with a parent or guardian, talking to Pastor Josh or a youth leader like myself, talking to a teacher or a counselor. These are all a great next step. But it's my hope and my prayer that you'll take this step, because God is loving and he created you for a purpose, and he has a plan for your life.